My name is Abby Stamp. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Executive Director of Measure 110 here with the Oregon Health Authority. And I will be doing my best to facilitate the meeting today. And my colleagues, Jason Hall and Kylie Cordy, will be helping dive into the applications as needed or desired through the conversation today. We learned a lot from our first panel meeting on Tuesday. Thank you for your engagement and your patience. I am happy to share that the OAC met yesterday and preliminarily or provisionally approved the Hood River County applications. There was a kerfuffle on one applicant whose application needs to be processed and considered, so that total may change, so you may see additional information from Hood River come in front of you as required. But that was a nice celebration that we were able to have yesterday, that one county is starting to really move forward. And also want to thank Carly for being our bus driver and our host for today. And she'll be helping with the technical components of the voting process. And speaking of technical components, we are trying to decide whether or not we really need to take attendance, like a roll call attendance for quorum. We have DOJ looking on whether we need to do that or not. Right now, we're going to believe we don't need to, but Carly, just so you know, has noted everybody's attendance here, and we are marking you as present and noting we do have quorum for today, so we are able to continue. I do want to remind everybody here and watching or watching later that we do welcome and encourage community input. Members of the public are invited to submit public comments or to get on our interested parties email list at oha.measure110.org at Oregon, measure110 at oha.oregon.gov. Thank you, Carly. And I believe, Rachel, to answer your question, the quorum is 24. I believe I'm 24, just confirming that with, yes, that is correct. Great. So I believe I can move us right into the business. I'll share with what our goal is for today, give you a heads up about next week, and then see if there's any questions before we begin. Today, we're going to dive back into Harney County, and we'll also talk about Gillum, Curry, and Crook counties and see if we can get to some recommendations to move forward with the OAC, who will be meeting next week. And I wanted to thank you all in advance, and a big shout out to my colleague Sam Byers for running these meetings next week. You saw a note from Carly. We are adding meetings next week, and a million thank yous to everybody for prioritizing those meetings. We're on such an incredible short timeline to get these applications approved and moving forward. And big thanks to Sam. I will be out of the office next week. I'll be with you in spirit, but I will not be here physically or even on the screen. That is our plan for today and for next week. Any questions before we dive into Harney County? Okay, hearing none, I want to do a quick call for conflicts as we will be discussing Harney County. Panel members with an actual conflict with an actual conflict of interest cannot participate in discussions on the matter that presents the conflict. In order to protect members, we will be calling for conflicts before the matter on the agenda discussed if the matter could present a conflict for a panel member. On the agenda today is a proposal regarding funding decisions for current Measure 110 applicants. Panel members may have a potential or an actual conflict of interest regarding this matter. And we, as a reminder, will be discussing Boulder Care Provider Group and Symmetry Care. If you announce a potential conflict of interest, you must announce the nature of the conflict, but you can participate in the discussion and vote. If you announce an actual conflict of interest, you must announce the nature of the conflict and refrain from participating in the discussion, and please turn your camera off. And if there are not enough members to vote on the proposal, members with actual conflicts of interest will be asked to vote in roll call order until a majority of votes for or against is reached. Thanks, Carly. Okay, anything before we dive in? Okay, and as a reminder, I'm going to share my screen, and as your facilitator, Please avoid using the chat to ask questions about applications or to engage in the panel review discussion. Please simply contribute if you are able to do so. If you are on the phone or on the road and can't, we'll watch that. But whenever possible, please avoid using chat and contribute into the space today. Okay, here I go. Harney County. All right, hopefully you're seeing my slide deck and not presentation mode. So you see all of my thumbnails on the left side. Carly, can you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, great. Thank you, Carly. So where we left off with Harney County on Tuesday was a discussion around the not Boulder Care, but Symmetry Care, and the fact that the program cost at $1.8 million left us confused about the financial or fiscal plan for funding and providing screening assessments, substance use disorder treatment, and peer support, because in their application, Symmetry Care indicated they would be doing those activities, but that they did not indicate how much they would be spending on what portions of their budget. So we don't have line items to consider. So this is a reminder for Harney County and where we ended up last time. And I made a note after consultation with DOJ, with Shannon O'Fallon, is that it is inappropriate for any of the Measure 110 staff to contact Symmetry Care and ask them about what did you mean to put in your application, because that would be messing with an objective process and mucking with something that shouldn't be mucked with. So I think the potential route forward, if you so choose, is that if the panel review would like to move these two applications forward in Harney County at the $2 million, which is the total county cap on their formula, to move that forward for OAC consideration, any negotiation on the back end should address what's happening with this budget to ensure there is high quality reporting, expense reporting, and data tracking for those 4 service areas that are not clear. So I'm going to pause there and see if that makes sense to folks of where we left off with Harney County. I'm going to flip back up to the previous slide, which has just a reminder, more of a global summary of Boulder Care across the first row and Symmetry across the second row, and pause and hear what people have to say or input you may all have. And also, I believe I need to correct myself. No, I don't. All right. I just want to open the floor up. We've got Jason who can dive into budgets. We've got Kylie who can dive into narratives, and a question or discussion about these 2 providers for Harney County. Hi, Jude. Hi, nice to see you here. Go ahead.
Hi, and I apologize if I'm asking something that was asked yesterday. I've been out on sick leave and I'm back. Can someone talk about the narrative related to the $60,000, the activities proposed for harm reduction?
Absolutely. Kylie, you have that at your fingertips?
Yes. So within the project scope, they identify their harm reduction services and information and education for naloxone kits available at all Symmetry Care locations and to community partners. Symmetry Care provides MAT services, access to registered nurse, housing assistance, and/or housing to prevent houselessness. Fresh Start Cafe has resources available on site, and the food coffee truck would be utilized for outreach and educational opportunities. From what it looked like in the coffee cart explanation, that harm reduction services and provisions within that would also be within that food truck as part of their outreach operation.
Okay. Can I ask a fiscal question then related to the harm reduction component? how much goes to supplies and how much goes to staffing?
Jason, you have the budget? Oh, you're already on. Go for it. Thank you.
Yeah, just trying to look at totals here, just a second. So it looks like there's, is that right? Yeah, 60,000 is going towards supplies. It's harder to tell in in their budget. It looks like they bundled all of their personnel supplies into the program or personnel costs into the program costs instead of breaking it out by service area. That's why some of the service areas have zeros. Harm reduction does have the 60,000 in service and supplies, but it looks like all of their, I can't tell you how much of their FT or of their personnel would be dedicated to harm reduction because they put it all in their program costs.
Did they put anything, sorry, to follow up question, did they put anything in there that extends beyond naloxone? Because for some of their services, naloxone would be it would be a program supplier, even reimbursable through insurance. And so I'm trying to get at, are they doing more comprehensive harm reduction, syringes, fentanyl test strips, anything other than naloxone? Anything broader than naloxone?
They do mention naloxone and then budget for outreach to be used for sponsor events, flyers, advertising, etc.
And the only thing within the project scope that's denoted beyond the kits is the access to a registered nurse, MAT services, and then housing assistance. And all of those resources are provided on this food, coffee truck, this mobile community outreach piece.
Okay, thank you.
I'm about to call on you, David. Thank you. I did want to reset that this conversation, looking at the $2 million where the two reviewers recommended both areas, is only for Symmetry Care. Only one reviewer recommended Boulder Care. And if Boulder Care was going to be contemplated by this group, this will be up and over the $2 million mark. David, go ahead.
I'm kind of chuckling about that, Abby, because that's what I was just going to bring in is I would like to understand. I mean, Boulder Care, as we were talking about on Tuesday, is, I mean, they've had applications in multiple counties. I reviewed an application in another county for them. And their applications are, I think what we talked about on Tuesday was, you know, there's a lot of general level stuff in there, even to the point of blank county is in their narrative. And the service that they provide is not a service that is not common in a lot of the other across the state, right? They're providing MAT specific services, and Symmetry Care states they're providing MAT services. But I just want to make sure that if we can take that into consideration when we're reviewing specifically Boulder Care. And also there's came up another application on Tuesday with the applications that do have one reviewer not passing them. Is it possible for our panel to get an understanding of what the particular reviewer was stating were reasons for not passing them? So we didn't talk about that on Tuesday. We just said, okay, well, they haven't been passed, but in another county they were passed. So so that's what I want to try to bring into this discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Did you have a response to?
Yes, I
Awesome.
did. And sorry, I literally apologize for just catching up. I feel like you guys have been going for a day and I'm getting on a freeway. So we are looking, so just to clarify, we're saying one or the other, but not both. And I guess where my understanding is that we're supposed to be funding across the continuum. And so I see Boulder Care doing the telemedicine, which is critically important in rural areas where people don't have access to providers, providing peer support that's related to that substance use disorder treatment. And we're saying we're not going to, that there was a discussion not to fund this for a rural county that has very little access to MAT and to only, there should be no wrong door to treatment, I guess is where I'm kind of trying to understand the rationale. Is it one or the other, or are we not looking?
Nope. everything is on the table. What you're seeing here is the results of the reviews. And so what I'm hearing is that it would be great for Kylie to pull up the Boulder Care rating that did not recommend SUD, peer support, and harm reduction for moving forward. And perhaps Juliana has some to add to that. So Juliana, why don't you go ahead while Kylie's pulling up that information.
Yeah, I know we've discussed the possibility that they copied their application across counties. So again, I didn't review this county, but I was looking back at some of my comments for why I did not recommend funding them in another county. And part of what I said is that they didn't actually describe the peer services that they would be providing. There wasn't, I can't recall if there wasn't a description at all, or if I just didn't feel like the description was adequate. They didn't mention working with their CMHPs, their tribes, or local CCOs. They stated that they generally work with CCOs, but not that they didn't call out even the particular CCO of the county. And it was really unclear in their fiscal and technical narrative how they would track the grant, like receipts and expenditures. And they like described using their EMR to do this, but I think that it wasn't just that the application was general. There were also really specific things about the application that I just felt like they weren't really providing much information. And of course, I can't speak to this specific county, but I just felt like there's too much missing information for me to confidently recommend them.
Thank you
Hi,
for
my name
deepening
is
that.
Sarah. Can you, I have mute. I am the one who reviewed this county. That is exactly, I have my review open. This is what I said. Not only were they vague in the overall application, but they did not describe the delineation between peer support services and other staffing. They also did not describe whether the FTE was going to be split between like existing staff or hiring of new staff, and the integration with CBOs and exactly what was just said. So I don't know if there are other questions, but however, I can, I guess, provide justification for the decline.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is a great deep conversation and potentially a weighing of different costs and benefits of having two providers and other options available in a rural community versus the quality or the indication of how well a telehealth organization will be able to integrate into a continuum of care. That's what I'm hearing. I'm trying to reflect for you all. David, is that what you were going to say?
No, I was just going to muck it up more. So, I mean, basically what I was going to say is that it's a difficult place for us to be to look at applications and then decide based on the application, the quality of the application, whether the program should be approved. And I know that's kind of what we're here to do. But at the same time, if a program is providing a service that is not see, I come from a program area. I'm an integrated co-occurring disorders analyst. So I know about the regions in the state. I know some of what's available and what's not. And I get concerned about taking a bad application and denying a service that's valuable to the community because they didn't do an application that was thorough and specific. And so that's a difficult decision for anyone to have to make, right? So that Boulder Care provides a service that doesn't have a lot of other providers in certain areas of the state. So that's my concern.
Thank you. And you're right, this is the job of the review panel. And our vote is not to fund, but is to recommend moving an application forward to consideration with the OAC. So ultimately the OAC makes that final decision. Great. Jude.
Yeah, I would say my concern is if these are the applicants that we have for this county, saying unless the OAC, and maybe tell me if I'm speaking out. The responsibility is to fund across this continuum. And we are saying we would rather have no application for substance use disorder treatment in this county to the OAC for their consideration to go find someone to do this. I mean, I guess I'm looking at this and I'm like, Harney County is very rural. Telemedicine works in rural areas. I don't see Symmetry Care applying for that part. And so we are saying people in Harney County are not going to have substance use treatment funded by Measure 110 funds.
So I'll just clarify, in their application narrative, Symmetry Care indicates they will do those services. They did not say in their budget how much money they would be using of their program costs to deliver those services. Kathy?
I'm just noting at the end on, it just doesn't, are those numbers correct? Are we missing any peer support numbers in there?
I'll ask Jason to open up the budget and verify our numbers.
Okay, and
Okay.
their program cost for Symmetry was extremely high on that.
Yep. And when we pulled up the budget, it's for a lot of staff that
Yeah.
could potentially be for screening, assessment, treatment, and peer support, but they didn't specifically indicate that. So we didn't want to make any assumptions about where those
Right.
dollars were being spent in which program area.
Well, and then I reviewed the past Measure 110 and what they were awarded and what they've expended, and they're right there, you know, on their expenditures. They're spending things out like they should.
I think we need, Kathy, I think we need to be really careful about how much we share about current.
Oh, okay.
grades
I'm
and
just going by
practice.
what's in that application. That's
Oh,
what's
that's
there.
in the application. Okay.
It is in the application. I
Great.
would never discuss anything otherwise.
Of course you wouldn't. Thanks, Kathy. My bad. Jason, you came off mute to clarify something, and then Dharma's on
Oh,
deck.
well, yeah, just agreeing with you that those numbers are correct. It's just looks like in their application, instead of breaking out the training and sort of personnel costs across the service areas, it's all bundled into program costs. So that 1.85 million theoretically is spread amongst peer support, SUD assessment, and screening. We just
Okay.
are not sure how.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Dharma.
Yeah, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but in making the recommendation, if there was not a good candidate to move forward to recommend to the OAC for funding, that it's not that those things would never get filled, right? Like, because there's a charge to contract those. OHA has the power to fill in the gaps essentially afterwards. If there wasn't a service that was being met in a county, was my understanding. In the previous grant cycles, when there's been a gap like that in the recommendation at the end or in the contracts that were made, that it was filled eventually. Those gaps, those services were not just like left as a gap. So is that right?
So let me be crystal clear that Symmetry Care is indicating they want to provide screening, assessment, SUD treatment, and peer support. Their program cost is $1.8 million in their budget. What we don't know is how much of the 1.8 million they will attribute or charge to screening, assessment, treatment, and peers. We know that they want to do it, and we just can't make any guesses about how many FTE are going to be each program in each program area. I will assert that in their application, they indicated that Symmetry Care wants to provide services in all 6 service areas.
And just to clarify the processually, like if there's a gap left over in the recommendation from this committee to the OAC, that it'll be filled through contract negotiations by OHA, right? So it's not like they're not going to have a service if we don't have a recommended provider from this committee.
Sam or someone, Jason, I heard.
Yeah,
you
it can be,
saying-
Dharma. The legislation did change a little bit on that, so we're not as prescribed as we were in the first cycle to have to fill service areas. The way the rule reads is that we have to do our best effort, what's practicable or practicable. I forget the word that it's a legal term, but anyway, we have to do our best basically to fill all the service areas, but then that would be up to the council a little bit more this time, how to proceed if there are any gaps after funding decisions are made.
Got you. Thank you.
Awesome. I get it. Thank you both. Mark.
Yeah, just quickly, how I understand where Jude's coming from with, we had this kind of a rural county, and it's difficult to get services out there. At the same time, we're looking at these applications, and we don't know if 2 people are applying here, or if 10, or maybe just one. But all we have to go for is the application that's in front of us. I think we have a little bit of a different kind of way that we're looking at this, specifically if we're not in the program units. So we're just gonna come at this with a variety of different backgrounds and expectations. Thanks.
Thank you. Keisha?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I know the reviewers did a great job, but I'm just wondering, is this a complete application if these service areas are not like explained and filled out?
I would say that if there is comfort moving forward, because in their application, they describe the services they would provide in each area, and they indicate they are applying to be providers in each of the service areas, that we would want to make sure that there is explicit understanding about the budget with agreement and vote from the OAC on said amounts.
Right, but it's also, I mean, in the application, it talks about like financial credit, what is the word for it? How somebody does their finances and all those things, but it's weird that they would have like a financial person and then they couldn't explain it in a budget.
Okay, noted. Sam?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is, so, Symmetry is the community mental health program in Harney. They are one of the only games in town, and they're obligated to actually provide all of the areas that they have not specified in terms of budget. I think that, and that is just, my own knowledge, and so that's maybe not helpful. What I would want to know, though, is how they explained how they would not supplant, right? And so as opposed to being concerned that they're going to do it all, because I'm not sure who else does do it in Harney County, to be totally honest, if you're, other than maybe the Burns Paiute tribe. But I would want to know how they are accounting for the finance, A, around not supplanting, and B, whether or not this funding is adding staff or some other enhanced service to what they already are obligated to do through their county financial assistance agreement. So those would be that would be more my focus than whether or not they have to do this. So there's that, but I'm just not clear because it's not broken down and I haven't seen the application. I just want to know about their, those documents around how they would not supplant, and then whether or not this is enhancing a service or fixing a shortfall or whatever it is at that point.
Okay. Kylie, what do you got?
So within the fiscal and technical narrative, question number 2 regarding the supplantation, this is their response. Symmetry Care's proposal is to expand Symmetry Care's consumer employment program. Symmetry Care is expanding the program to include 4 full-time lead positions and up to 6 part-time consumer employees. Obsidian Ranch has added a greenhouse to the property. Symmetry Care would use funds to cover wages for a new full-time lead employee who will oversee the new greenhouse and care for garden and grounds keeping. Vegetables grown in the garden and greenhouse will be used at Fresh Start Cafe and our residential program. This lead would oversee a couple consumer employees to assist in groundskeeping and the greenhouse. Obsidian Ranch would also hire 2 new lead employees for maintenance and repairs projects. Fresh Start will use the funds to purchase a food vehicle to deliver pre-made food and coffees to local businesses. Funds would be used to pay the wages of a full-time lead employee and 2 part-time consumer leads. Consumer employees are individuals in various stages of recovery and are managed by the CADC CRM. The goal is to have consumer employees to have the skills and resources needed to transition to permanent jobs and housings within a year. And these individuals have the opportunity to earn weekly incentives based on attendance, clean UAs, job performance, etc.
Thanks, Kylie. So that answer is really more about outreach engagement and peers, not necessarily about clinical services. Okay. Sarah.
Hi, so I just want to clarify that the number of persons in Boulder Care, the number of persons that were served between the service areas was duplicative. So though we're talking about with Symmetry, how there was like not a delineation between the services, though they indicated that services were going to be provided across multiple areas. In Boulder Care, there was indication that they were going to provide multiple services, but there was not a description of differential client impact. So like it's the opposite. I just wanted to provide that context. So though they're providing more, like indicating more services, there's not a description of like specific service impact. So there's that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just go ahead.
Yeah, well, first I want to say thank you, Sam. What you were saying really clarified my thinking on the other areas, why they might have zeros. But I guess I want to make the observation, and especially after listening to the description of I guess what I'm looking at are what would be housing and harm reduction. Like, I feel like there's issues with both of these applications. They are different issues with the different applications. And I guess I just need to sit for a second after listening to the narrative to try to sort through what I'm going to go back and look, because, you know, the intent of Measure 110, as I was reading in the ORSs that we were supposed to read, I just feel like I'm just a little bit concerned about the application narratives for both of these entities.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sam.
So I think based on the, you know, the financial section that we just heard, what I'm walking away with is that potentially there isn't a burn, right? Based on this funding, right? Because that money here is going towards it's going towards an expansion of a project that is, you know, I think rooted in recovery practices and for other services, but the assumption then it would require everyone to know that Symmetry does screening, assessment, SED, and peer support maybe, and that is not how our process happened. So I think that either this should be, I mean, I guess where I'm concerned is that like the review panel needs to know that there's a burn in Harney County. The way this has been submitted by the applicant does not necessarily demonstrate that we have a burn. It would take people who just happen to work with CMHPs to know that they are one, right? And that they're obligated to it, which is also can't be, you know, factored in. And it's not clear that until we heard the financial on what the money is really being used for, which is an expansion and enhancement of good, you know, I think practice. But you know, if I could recommend anything, I think that there is work for our 110 team to do to really make sure that there's a burn there based on either Symmetry Care and Boulder Care, or we're going to be building one for them. So, you know, just as a recommendation, I think there needs to be a direct conversation with Symmetry Care to understand if they identify themselves as a burn and they're going to do these services with other funding and are using the 110 funding to enhance a much more organic and folks in recovery being able to be employed and develop, or if we really don't have a burn. That's problematic.
Because this is where we got a little farther, have come a little farther today on Harney County than where we were on Tuesday. I assert, I believe, I think we in the Measure 110 program team need to consult DOJ, Sam, because we were really told we should not be picking apart an application or doing any follow-up with an applicant until there is determination from OAC about whether there are some negotiations or some approvals with kind of moving things around. I'm curious from folks if you feel like we should continue to table Harney County now that we've deepened this conversation until I get some consult from DOJ and identify how to move this forward next. I guess okay, there's a few thumbs ups. Are there any concerns about tabling and pausing on Harney County and moving on to Gillum today? Okay. See, only little thumbs. So we're going to go ahead and do that. This is good information, great conversation to have as discovering information for the attorneys to figure out what's a reasonable, legal, and practicable way to move forward with Harney County. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing screen. And thank everybody for that conversation. This is great, and I know it's hard, but being able to hear you all and really lean into the conversation about the applicants and the coverage and the requirements for burn-in a rural community is incredibly helpful. Okay, we ready to move into Gillum? Calling for conflicts for Gillum County. Providers are familiar, Boulder Care and Community Counseling Solutions. Panel members with an actual conflict of interest cannot participate in discussions on the matter that presents a conflict. In order to best protect members, we will be calling for conflicts before a matter on the agenda is discussed, if the matter could present a conflict for a panel member. On the agenda today is a proposal regarding funding decisions for M110 applicants. Panel members may have a potential or an actual conflict of interest regarding this matter. If you announce a potential conflict of interest, you must announce the nature of the conflict, but you can participate in discussion and vote. If you have an actual conflict of interest, announce an actual conflict of interest. You must announce the nature of your conflict and refrain from participating in the discussion. Please turn your camera off. If there are not enough members to vote on the proposal, members with actual conflicts of interest will be asked to vote in roll call order until a majority of votes for or against is reached. Thank you, Carly. Jude, I saw your hand come up. Do you have something to announce?
Yeah, I wasn't sure because my understanding of having looked up what a conflict is, but I do want to say potential conflict. Community Counseling Solutions is a grantee on a project that I have worked with at OHA.
Great. Thank you for that. All right, I'm going to share screen and go right to the blue and green table. If anybody wants me to go back, I can navigate backwards and look at all of the different service areas and do that breakout that we did on Tuesday, but I'll just summarize here. So both reviewers recommended any cell in the green. One reviewer recommended any cell in blue. And if it's an NA because they didn't apply for a service area, that is grayed out. You also see the program costs on the far right, summarizing the costs the applicant indicated they would need to be a burn in this county. So Boulder Care, which we've had a lot of conversations about this telehealth provider in this community, both reviewers endorsed the SUD service area for Boulder Care at $28,000. One of the two reviewers supported the application for peer support and harm reduction, and community counseling services, both reviewers recommended across the board. Total program costs for all of the recommended service areas is there on that one. I'm going to move to this. If we add everything together, the recommended service areas and program costs, it is about $39,000 over the county formula, which an old boss of mine used to use the term decimal dust, where that's something that we can work with and figure out, but it is still over the formula recommended amount for rural county at the rural floor at 2 million. So this is the summary for Gillum County, and if anybody has any comments, feedback, observations about Boulder Care and Community Counseling Services applications specifically, please chime in. Do we have either of these reviewers here today? Keisha.
I'm sorry, I missed the population of Gilliam County and okay, got it.
Thank you for that. I meant to stop on this slide before I move forward. Rachel, I saw you raise your hand that you were a reviewer. Did you have any comments or feedback about the applications?
Not anything that's coming up, so.
Okay.
I'm just saying the costs are a little high for community counseling solutions.
Keisha, would it be helpful to hear from the budget how many people community counseling services is intending to serve with those dollars?
Yes, please.
Great. Jason?
Just one moment.
This is coming back to me. I don't know why Tuesday feels like 100 years ago or kind of like this morning, but it's all sort of blending together. We started this conversation about Gillum County. And I recall please correct me if I misremember, but I remember a conversation about the peer support at 662K and that there was a bit of sticker shock about that high amount. Thank you, Sam. And I reached out to the Community Counseling Solutions contact person on the grant to ask them about if they could break out to help us understand that at your request, and I have not heard back. Jason, anything else to add?
Yeah, so, well, and what was the specific, was it a specific service area that we had a question in?
Lakeisha, did you have a specific service area you wanted us to tell more about the budget?
Probably peer support, harm reduction, screening assessment. Is that a FTE or what?
So for peer support, sorry, my Excel is not making reading easy. So for peer support, there was 0.25 FTE, which was it's a cost share with Morrow, Wheeler, and Grant counties. So I guess it's being split, someone being split 4 ways. I'm a certified recovery mentor peer supervisor. There's a certified recovery mentor peer, 0.5 FTE, cost shared with Wheeler County, a care transition coordinator, 0.05 FTE, cost shared with the 4 counties again, a harm reduction and education coordinator at 0.2 FTE, cost shared with Morrow, Wheeler, again, the 4 counties, a supported employment specialist at 0.4 FTE, cost shared with Wheeler and Grant. So that was all pure support. And then, I'm sorry, you said housing, was that the other one?
Yeah, and a lot of those weren't even, so would that equal like a total of
So the
2 FTE?
Yeah, so it was there is only, let's see.
Cause I heard a lot of 0.25s, 0.2s,
Right. Yeah, it's a total of 500 and 50,000 over the 4 years for the peer support, the in this personnel costs.
Thank you, Jason. Sean?
Mute was having an issue. I just wanted to clarify something. Is this the county that we tabled last time because there was an issue around the $80,000 coffee truck? Is that the same one?
That's the same one? No, actually, I apologize. That was the last one that we discussed. That was Harney County.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
this one, there's a question about what's the peer support dollars. And because that wasn't a change in the application, I did some follow-up as you all requested, but I have not heard back.
Okay, thank you.
And then harm reduction too.
Keisha, you want Jason to report what they are asking for harm reduction?
Yes, please.
And then Jude, you're next.
In the personnel costs, they actually don't have any personnel costs in harm reduction. It's just service and supply costs. They're just asking for harm reduction. They're just asking for the 48,000 in services and supplies.
Jude?
Yeah, and maybe this is a combo of the budget and the narrative. So picking up, first of all, great questions, Lakeisha. Picking up on the harm reduction, what supplies do they have listed? And then what are the activities that they say they're going to do with those supplies?
In the budget, they do list Narcan and safe use supplies. Safe use kits, sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
And is that, and then I guess I had a question about the peer support numbers where you were saying 550K over 4 years. So that would divide up into 137K per year for all those FTEs. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, that $662,000 is for a 4-year grant period.
For
And
a 4-year, for just that one, for that one county or for the 4 counties?
Oh, good question.
This would be just, yeah, it's just the cost for this county. Some of those FTEs are being split among the counties, so I think the people are moving around a bit between the counties to deliver services, but they were splitting it out, so this should be just the portion for this county.
And Jason,
Okay.
sorry, Jude, 1 second, Jason, while you have that up, I believe they indicated they would be serving 15, 20 people a year, something like that on that same chart.
Let's see, yeah, are we talking?
Peer
Sorry,
support.
Peer support, yes, sorry. Yeah, so 15 referral employment, 15 referral service, 15 employment support in the first year, 17 in both in the second year, 22 in both in the third year, and then 26 in both in the 4th year.
Thank you. Jude, did you have a follow-up?
No, I was just thinking, can you tell me the number of their peer FTEs, and then just, you know, I guess what I feel like I bring to this discussion is, you know, implementing harm reductions and using peers. Do they have in their application that the peers would also be doing the harm reduction activities?
Yeah, one of the titles in their peer support is one of the people, the 0.2 FTE is a harm reduction and education coordinator, but that's all I can get from the budget. It might be more in the narrative that they talk about that.
Okay, thanks. But how many FTEs for the peers?
Let's see, so it's 0.25 for a supervisor, 0.5 for a peer, 0.05 for a care transition coordinator, 0.2 for a harm reduction and education coordinator, 0.4 for a supported employment specialist. And that's everything.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Amy, Candace, you are next, and go ahead.
Who's next, me or Candace?
No, you come over as Candace. Your name is Candace on Zoom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Hi,
Oh,
Amy.
wow. Sorry.
That's
Okay.
okay. No, you are.
I was wondering, I'm like, why is that? Okay, God. I apologize. Today's been a day. I'm with Keisha on this. I don't, that's, this is just a lot. I feel like for 20,000 or 20 or 2,000 people, I feel like maybe their budget is reflecting multiple counties. And one of the exact questions on the application that you had to stick to was strictly doing a budget for the county. And if you were going to be in more counties, you had to do budgets for those counties. So I feel like that line got crossed here from what I'm hearing and the answers that have been given back by the questions that have been asked by our panel here. And I feel like that kind of doesn't more or less disqualify them, but I don't feel comfortable with the amounts because of the volume they're serving. The amounts don't mesh with the volume served for this county.
Okay.
Now, if they are serving those other counties as well, right, that would make a difference.
So, and what we're confirming is this is specific to this Gillum application. So I want to, I see, so Amy, if you have more to share, by all means.
No,
Okay. And I hear you. And I want to reflect on the fact that we had these applications reviewed. Both reviewers recommended community counseling services be funded in these program areas at these dollar amounts. And to just level set for us that our job today is to decide what to move forward to the OAC for their consideration. Our vote today will not be a final vote that these providers will or will not receive specific dollar amounts for specific services. So I know there's so much curiosity and so many questions. I just don't want to get so stuck that we're going to be unable to get through all 36 counties in a timely manner to give the OAC time to really do that decision-making and that voting. So I know, Rachel, you said you reviewed one of these applications. I'm curious about your input, and then Dharma is next.
Yeah, so it's a little bit behind now, but I wanted to just add a little bit of context to the peer support budget because there's another section that we didn't discuss, which kind of makes up that additional $100,000. So I just wanted to name that there's another piece of the budget that's not FTE related. And then I also wanted to as a follow-up to Amy's comment, just to reassure that in my interpretation of the budget and the proposal, there's not a combining of counties. So I just wanted to just reassure that this budget is reflective only of this county. So
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Dharma.
For me, I'm just wondering if what you were saying, Abby, too, that this doesn't necessarily have to hamper down the whole process, but that also it seems reasonable to me in some rural counties that we have a harder time with staffing and retention with folks. And so thinking through that too, that it's harder, it's more expensive to fund in a smaller county per person, right? That there's a higher cost for the staffing that might not reflect based off of the population size. It might not be as apparent, but it is very expensive for folks here in rural Oregon to pay for the workforce that we need compared to population size. It doesn't always play out as evenly. And then I would support the reviewer's recommendation on moving that forward.
That was almost a motion, Dharma. Thank you. Zen?
Yeah, just real quick so I understand. So if they're putting in for like just for example, like 0.2 for an FTE in one spot and 0.5 in another. And this is in combination with another county. So this potentially is like having one person serve multiple counties. Would that be fair to assume that's?
I see Rachel nodding, who reviewed the application.
All right. Okay, I just want to make sure that, and then are the counties getting everything they need if a person's working multiple counties? And anyway, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we forward Gilliam County as recommended funding by both reviewers, so the green section, to the OAC committee to review.
Second.
Okay. And that just for context, that puts us just over the $2 million mark.
And real quick, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Keisha.
I'm just looking at that program cost at almost 400,000 for community counseling. So we're approving that too. I thought it was supposed to be like 10% or something.
We're not approving anything. We're just
I mean, not
saying
approving,
that
but
we're
like,
moving it forward
it's
to
not
the
a
OAC
concern,
committee to
I would
approve.
say. So that's not a concern that program cost is there either. And
The
I'm not
OAC
discounting the
committee will deal
reviewers,
with that,
but
Keisha.
Why don't we
okay.
have Jason pull up the budget and indicate what the 400,000 is for community counseling services, so you'll at least know what you're voting to move forward.
So in program costs, they do have staffing for a program manager, HR support, a care coordinator, partial positions on all of those. They have services, and let's see, that is a total of, that's 300,000 of the it's about 320,000 or 330,000 of what they're asking for on the program costs. And then they also have, oops. Sorry, my Excel is now fighting with me. There we go. About 64,000 in services and supplies, childcare supports, community outreach, and marketing and advertising.
Thanks, that's helpful. So there's a motion on the table and a second to move forward for OAC consideration, substance use disorder program area for Boulder Care, and all 6 service areas, for community counseling services. Is there any other discussion or questions before we vote?
I just had a quick comment. So like when this makes it to the OAC, they feel like that we have done our due diligence here, but here we're feeling like we're passing it over to them, and then they feel like they can't ask questions because the due diligence is done here. But I don't know. I'm just a little,
Well, this is absolutely not simple, and it is definitely complex. But what I'm hearing is that this is a rural community that needs the services. This application, for all intents and purposes, is just around their formula amount, and there can always be negotiations down the line. But that identifying that these services are needed in this community, and this would be mostly one provider, with additional substance use disorder services from Boulder Care at 28,000.
Yeah, Abby, can we make a note for the OAC Council that, so we fully understand when it comes to the OAC Council what our responsibilities are, because what Keisha's saying is correct. A lot of us on there think that everything's being squashed out here, and then all we got to do is approve it there. But we need to know if we need to delve further into this. So I'm hoping we can make a note of that.
Yep, no problem. My understanding is that you all as the OAC have final decision-making authority. So you could take everything this panel review, as is, or you could do whatever you want with it. And I think the biggest challenge in front of us is time. Mark.
Yeah, this goes along with what Zeb was saying, which is kind of in general, we're going to get into these counties that are quite a bit more over their allocation than this one.
That's
And
right.
so where does that adjustment take place? Does that take place here? On the recommendation, or does that happen over on the council side?
Can I get Sam or Jason or someone who's been with Measure 110 longer than myself to say more about the process, and so that we can set this up for success?
I mean, I think like the goal of the review panel meeting review panels would be to get as close as we can to the guidelines that the council provided in the funding recommendation or funding formula. It's up to the council to give make final recommendations and final funding decisions, right? And then there'll be a negotiation phase to sort of iron out any remaining issues that, you know, any budget needs or some of these concerns that maybe come from the council at that point, like we want to fund it, but we're concerned about this. In a negotiation phase to address that. I'm not sure if that helps, but Sam.
Yeah, I just was going to underscore what Jason said and just say I think that my understanding was more along Zeb's line, where we were really trying to dig in here fully so that the council would have our best recommendation. The full council would still be able to see and ask, you know, like all the providers that had applied and all of those things and make adjustments as needed. But that the review panel would really be presenting kind of a balanced budget and burn to the full council.
Amy?
That's why, like, I'm with the motion that I made. I want the council needs to know that they're going to need to, I want them to review this. We're just, according to what I understood the other day, was we are only voting to move it forward with the consideration for the council to make consideration to review the budget. And that would be the motion, right? I motion to move forward to approve the green areas with the council looking at the budgets. Because if you're telling me the council has the final decision, and then I'm hearing that we're supposed to be doing that on this end, this isn't going to work. And we're going to stay stuck the way we are. And it's just going to be a long drawn out process and nobody's going to get funded. This isn't going anywhere. So I don't know what the solution is for that, or if we just need to include that in our motion that this review panel has concerns, but we are moving it forward for OAC approval.
I'm sorry, I keep pressing the wrong button. Sam, do you want to, because you're already, you were the interim 110 director and are already engaging, could you kind of like help us move this along a little bit, please? And respond to Amy and
yeah, I don't know if I can. I think it's a combination of sort of all the statements being correct, right? Like part of it is looking at this and saying, you know, can we agree even, you know, that this is a burn that we would move forward? I think that the council, as the full council, could potentially look and have a completely different set of concerns from us. So, you know, I think emphasizing that we want to at least take a really good look at whether or not these burn components make sense. I think we can also voice areas of concern that we'd like to have addressed, and that those can be brought forward to the council or, you know, for resolution as well. But you know, I think that the full council has full ability to be like, this doesn't look right at all. You know, like our work here to try to come up with you know, a formula that provides a full burn and meets sort of our budget limitations does not replace the fact that the full council could say, we'd like you to reconsider this county in a different way. So I just wanted to emphasize that. So I think as hashing it out, really trying to figure out like, hey, is this reasonable for all that we have on the table and all the needs, and understanding that what we're putting forward is not like a final period. The full council will have the ability to be like, yep, that sounds good, or like, no, I don't know how you came to that.
Thank you. Rachel, please.
Yes, I have an idea for how we could potentially pass this as a balanced budget, just to throw this out as an idea, which would be to adopt all of the pieces in the green and then to adjust any overage from the program cost in the community counseling solutions budget. So that 39,000 overage would be reduced from the program cost. And that, as somebody who reviewed this and has reviewed Boulder Care apps, that's something that I feel like would meet the needs of providing the range of services for this very small and rural community. So it's just an offering.
Dharma?
I feel that amount, the 39,000, is going to be negligible in the overall discussion that's going to happen. I think I'm kind of in between what Zeb was saying and I guess the decision to move this forward is that, like, I think we just need more time on the OAC side to analyze things, because I feel like it's not clear that we'll have as much time for analysis on that side if we move this forward. And so I think that's just where my concern is. I don't feel like we should move it. I don't think that determining now that the 39,000 should be negotiated from either side is helpful, in that it could change too, based on, like, because like we could send that forward with a recommendation and it could just not get followed, right? Or it could get worked out in contract negotiations later. But I think that I feel like this is as close as we're going to get on this county, and that we should move it forward just so that we can let the OAC have more time to discuss this later too.
Okay, so there was a motion on the table that was seconded to move forward with all of the green areas on this chart, which includes SUDS with Boulder Care and all of the service areas from community counseling services. So we either need to vote on that motion that was seconded or rescind it. Does that motion stand with the second?
Yes.
Okay, we need to take a vote. Carly?
Do we want to do like we did last time and raise hands, or do you want me to call?
I think you should call. So this is a warning for everybody. Your name will be called. Please vote yes or no. Thanks for asking, Carly.
Mm-hmm. All right, Amy.
Yes.
Dharma.
Yes.
Hubert. Keisha.
Yes, with concerns.
Melinda. Morgan. Don't know if she's here. Nicole Silva.
Yes, with concerns.
Ron Williams. Zeb.
Yes, with concerns.
Abby.
Yes.
Ariana.
Abstain.
Ane.
Yes.
Dana. Daniel.
Yes.
Danielle Cartwright. David Course.
Yes.
Drew Simpson.
Yes.
Elizabeth Padilla.
Yes.
Emily Pertu.
Yes.
Evelyn Salinas. I think that she left early. Gina Mason. Grace.
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Greta,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
John McIlveen, and Judith has a potential. Juliana,
Yes.
June Bernard,
Abstain.
Kathy,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Kirsten Brown,
Yes.
Liz Fernley, Luann, Mark,
Yes.
Maya,
Yes.
Megan, Nicole Corbin,
Yes.
Nicole Egler,
Yes.
Rachel Lawrence,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Sarah Adelhart, Sarah Hubner,
Yes.
Sean McMahon.
Abstain.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Abstain.
Okay. Stanley Minetti,
Yes.
Tammy,
Yes, with concerns.
Tatiana,
Yes.
and Tim. I believe he is here. And that passes. 1 second, let me get an actual total. And it passes with 30.
Thank you, Carly. Appreciate you doing that. I am learning a lot as the facilitator today, and we are going to dive into another county, and we are going to have a conversation. One of the things that has been really challenging for me is the binary yes/no vote, and each panel reviewer being so thoughtful and careful and ensuring that your yes or no vote really reflects everything that is in your ethical soul. And I've done processes where we can vote support and also allow. And allow is a yes, I support this. However, I want to note my concerns. So I would like to propose, and I apologize for the last minute shift here, but with this vote today, for those of you who voted yes with concerns, would you please put those concerns in the chat? And then between maybe Carly and Kathy, we can capture those concerns and ensure that we are clear, not just that you are concerned, but that we are identifying what those specifically are. And then that can be shared with the OAC. And I'd like you all to consider, as we move into Curry County, that the option to vote yes, and I have concerns, that you should articulate those concerns, and we will make sure that those are documented. And perhaps that is a way to be able to move us through this while not compromising our ethical souls. I'm hoping that feels like an okay way to move forward, because these are going to get more complicated. Okay. I'm going to take a breath and we're going to go back to it. Jude.
I was going to share, and maybe, I don't know if, and then I'll step back, but on the a harm reduction committee that I'm working on, they use the fist to 5 voting. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That would allow for the discussion if someone says absolutely not, for what would it take to move forward. And that would give the OAC a more nuanced view of what people thought. It might be too late to do that for this process, but I think moving forward, the OAC is very consensus, it's consensus. Often a consensus process is, in my observation, it might be more reflective of their values of wanting to make sure that everybody has a voice and majority doesn't always rule, because that's been used in the past to shut down voices.
Yes.
Particularly in communities of color.
100%. This binary voting is also new to me. And I do appreciate the fluidity of being able to support something in a multitude of different ways. This is something I'll need to talk to DOJ about to see if we can change practice. And in that tune, so that's why I vote yes, but these are my concerns, feels like an okay-ish way to at least deepen that vote. So sharing screen, and thank you all for your continuing to be here with me today to remind us about the objective of the review panel. OAR reads, once applications have been evaluated and scored, the review panel may meet as many times as necessary and must provide final funding recommendations to the Oversight and Accountability Council. So that's really what we are charged with doing. The review panel must, to the greatest extent practicable, recommend at least one applicant in each service area in each county. And the goal then is that for each of the 36 counties of Oregon, we must complete a successful majority vote. That's the place that gets the yay nays on funding recommendations for the OAC for consideration when they're building the burn. So just to level set, that's where we are. Okay. And come on, slides, wake up. Back to Curry County, southwest corner of the state. 23,000 is the population. Poverty rate is 12%. Here's some other statistics. Okay. And I'm going to go through the applications here. I'm going to skip the individual slides and go straight to the green and blue. The countywide formula is just under $4 million. There were 6 applications submitted and all 6 passed. The applicants are ADAPT, Bay Area First Step, Boulder Care, Brookings Core Response, HIV Alliance, and Oregon Recovers. The total countywide applicant ask is $9.7 million, leaving a deficit of over $5.8 million. So like we said, it was going to get more complex. Welcome, here we are. So these next slides, I'm just going to gracefully go through. Please holler if you want to see them, but this is just by service area as we went through last time. And this is the summary page. So to walk you through this, and I need to take a quick bio break. So once I go through this, I'm just going to mute, and please just raise your hand if you reviewed any of these and contribute your thoughts so that we can come into conversation. So ADAPT applied for screening, SUD, peer support, housing, and harm reduction. Oh, and assessment, but they didn't put a dollar amount in there. And a reminder that the green cells is when both of the reviewers recommended funding for these service areas. Bay Area First Step, neither reviewer recommended funding any of the service areas. For Boulder Care, the SUD and harm reduction were both recommended by both viewers, and only one recommended peer support. Brookings Core Response applied for, and both reviewers recommended funding peer support at $1.5 million. HIV Alliance applied, and both reviewers recommended for $77,000 and $1 million for housing and harm reduction, respectively. Oregon Recovers, one reviewer recommended moving forward with peer support and another with harm reduction. So what to flag here is the potential gap in assessments. It might be a good idea to open up the ADAPT application and see if perhaps this was we didn't put money in assessment, but we're planning on doing that. I'll look forward to hearing from that from a reviewer. And what I want to share with all is if we just move the green boxes forward, we're looking at still $3.7 million over the total formula amount. So this is going to require some critical thinking about how we get us to a more reasonable recommendation to the OAC within that $3.9 million total county formula. And reminding us of the prioritization that we discussed last time. Priority 1, very clearly per rule, we need to have at least one service area for each county. That we wanted to prioritize applicants who had full responses for cultural competency and cultural and linguistically competent services, who also provided services to other underserved populations, such as folks suffering with trauma, intellectual and developmental disabilities, gender affirming care, and the like. And also were able to affirmatively complete the question about being able to bill Medicaid. And whenever possible, an additional focus on housing, said treatment, and peers, and then fund a whole provider rather than slicing and dicing and peppering dollars around, which could create a financial and operational burden on smaller providers. I am going to, I think, leave you here at slide 17. It would be really great if any of the reviewers could chime in. I see Keisha's handed up and Sam. Please go ahead and take it away. I will be back in about 45 seconds.
Just had a quick, somebody put in the chat, did you call for conflict for this county?
I did not call for conflicts. Thank you, Keisha. I will do that.
Give me one moment. I can pull up this slide.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for keeping me on point. I can't see the chat. I should have it memorized by now. So Curry County, the applicants are ADAPT, Bay Area First Step, Boulder Care, Brookings Core Response, HIV Alliance, and Oregon Recovers. And I don't have it memorized, but I know there's a potential or an actual, and if you have them, you need to announce them. Thank you.
Hi, this is June Bernard. I would like to say I have a potential conflict of interest with most of these grantees. I administered grants to them on the Measure 110 team.
Thank you, June. So I'm going to read this really fast.
I have a potential conflict of interest with HIV Alliance too.
Great. Thanks, Dharma. Okay. Panel members with an actual conflict of interest cannot participate in discussions on the matter that presents a conflict. In order to best protect members, we'll be calling for conflict before a matter agenda is discussed. On the agenda today is a proposal for Measure 110 funds for Curry County providers. Panel members may have a potential or actual conflict. If you announce a potential, you must announce the nature of the conflict, but you can participate in the discussion and vote. If you announce an actual conflict, you must announce the nature of the conflict and refrain from participating. Please turn your camera off. If there are not enough members to vote on the proposal, members with actual conflicts of interest will be asked to vote in roll call order unless a majority of votes for or against is reached. Thank you, Carly, and thanks for catching my error. Jude and then Sam.
Yep. Sorry, this is Jude. I think I have a potential conflict of interest. I work with every one of these organizations. And can someone define again, because I looked up potential conflict of interest. Can we have that definition read? Because I want to make sure that I'm not declaring potential conflicts. I don't know if anyone else is.
Yeah, right.
In there, does people in their grant and program work with?
Oh, I don't want
folks in the community.
I mean, it'd be like getting a Pell Grant
does.
to go to college.
Carly, do you have that handy?
It's like, this is something on the other side. She and I are friends. She had some work.
Oh.
And so what, you
Give
mentioned
me
something about how it
one
would have,
second.
like,
Do
wiped
we
you out,
have
right?
a
Because
I have
an
I
actual
work about
definition, or
6,
did you want
7
me to pull
hours a
that
week.
slide back up?
No, we're looking for an actual definition. And my understanding is that if there's an actual conflict of interest, you can name it. It's either related to yourself or your family members. But if a potential is more of a proximity and what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, being more proximal to the work of an organization, and potentially there could be some ethical questions. But we can look up, I'm sure it's easy to grab. I'm just trying to step.
Yeah, I mean, I
Not only the ethics could inquire about that definition. I don't know if we can or not, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'll put up the definition from OGEC in the chat.
Yeah, when I looked up the definition, it has to, my understanding is that it has to do with, I'm not going to financially benefit from any, whether or whatever happens with any of these decisions with any of these agencies, but I do have significant familiarity with multiple organizations on this list, and all of them are participating in one project that I'm involved with.
I don't want to offer a definition for anyone, but if this is helpful, I'm declaring a potential conflict of interest because I work on a grant funded project with HIV Alliance. And so I'm going to recuse myself just on that basis alone.
Thank you for stating the potential conflict and the nature of it. Dharma, go ahead, Zeb.
Is there somebody from DOJ here? We were told last time we had to go through the Oregon Government Ethics Commission and had to call the phone line to get clarification. So I don't know if there's somebody from DOJ here that can answer that.
No, I don't think we have anybody from DOJ here today.
I can speak just a little bit. Yeah, we're not allowed to give advice on conflicts or anything like that. We can direct to OGEC. That's why I dropped that definition directly from them in the chat. But we can't give just any advice pertaining to conflicts. I can also send out an email with OGEC's contact information that y'all can contact them directly and go over your conflicts, and they can help answer any questions.
Thanks, Carlene. What you've dropped in the chat is super helpful. Sam?
Yeah, I think agree with we need DOJ to, is really providing the guidance. I think what would be helpful is probably for the majority of OHA staff, we are working with all of these providers. So clarifying the difference between what's a conflict in terms of the benefit, or like Dharma had mentioned, like I'm actually on the project or something, versus the fact that we all work with all of these providers all the time outside of Measure 110 too.
Any other conflict announcements? Proclamations? I don't remember what the word is even now at this point. Okay, I'm going to go back to Curry County. For those who reviewed the 6 applications, it'll be great to hear your input, and recall we want to get to a relative recommendation within the formula amount for the OAC's consideration. Sam, go.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if we're allowed to ask for any clarity on how Bay Area First Step was no across the board, particularly peer support, as they are a peer-run organization.
Are there any reviewers here today for Bay Area First Step? If not, we'll pull up Jason, that would be in the scoring rubric. So that would be on you, and thank you for that. But are there any reviewers who can speak directly? Hearing none.
I reviewed this application. Sorry, give me 1 second.
Sorry,
I'm
Sarah,
trying to
thank
pull
you.
up my review. Yeah. Okay. So what was the specific area we wanted peer review?
The question was about Bay Area First Step and how neither reviewer recommended any service area, but same as specifically about peer support at $382,000 because it's a peer-run organization.
Yeah, so the peer, what I have written is that the peer hire was a clear benefit, but that they budgeted several items under the peer, including vehicle transportation, office supplies, and program supplies, which were unclear. So office and program supplies are, there's some anticipated budgeting that would occur there, but that the combined cost was really high. Program supplies for clients were, those were duplicative across the service areas. And there was no mention of vehicle and transportation in their application, but it was listed in the project scope or in the budget. And then they also had peer hires, which were budgeted under screening and harm reduction. So the budget was unclear, and I have an overall. So they lacked sufficient detail on how development and application would align with the budget and the listed grant activities. Distinction between other funding sources and the impact of, because they listed another funding source also on their application. And they didn't delineate their services between that external funding and this funding. Allocation of funding for services was diffuse and fragmented across the budget. It was difficult to approve funding affirmatively for each service. Lack of clarity and detail in the budget and client outreach. Yes, those are, sorry, I'm just reading my notes, but those are the highlights.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yep.
Jude.
Hi, this is Jude. I guess what I wanted to note, because Sarah, thank you for that detailed information, that if you look across, they don't have program costs listed. And so it sounds like based on what you read, that they had taken the program costs for each of their items and maybe included it in that area instead of adding it up at the end, which, with our previous county discussion, there was that $400,000 sitting in the program costs. So that I know we can't go back and ask them, but I think that is feels like a reasonable as I look at their line. Also, I would say in my experience of harm reduction, that's why I asked the question about the previous county, were peers allocated to provide harm reduction services? Because often when you're doing the peer support as defined by the ORSs that we were to read, that peer support is happening during the context of substance use disorder treatment for many agencies, but peers also work across the continuum, and the harm reduction peer section, which is critical to Measure 110, would be delivered under that harm reduction box. And so those peers, in my experience of working across the state with peer organizations, those peers are different. And so, they're going to look at their peer support as a peer-based agency, how their peers are fitting into each of these service categories, probably including screening and assessment. I can't say, because we'd have to have someone read about what they propose to do for the peer support, what they propose to do for the harm reduction, and what they propose, what their housing stuff is. But that's just based on, it could be that they followed the directions in a different way than the other people looking at the applications, just looking at what's written here and what you just shared. Thank you.
I'm happy to support any additional clarification that you'd like me to read off from the project scope. If that helps, would anybody like to hear about their narrative description regarding peer support, SUD, housing? Is that helpful?
You got a thumbs up from Jude.
Perfect. Sorry, I can't see. All right. So they describe that their SUD treatment is the cornerstone of their offerings. They have designed a SUD program to be flexible and accommodating, facilitating warm handoffs to counselors who provide empathetic support and guidance. This model allows participants to engage in the recovery process without fear of stigma or barriers that may prevent them from seeking help. SUD program continues their evolution. They have expanded the range of effective treatment options that resonate with diverse individuals seeking recovery. That is all that is said on SUD. Secondly, peer support. Their staff plays a crucial role in fostering that supportive community. They're leveraging their own recovery experiences. Their peers utilize a strengths-based, person-centered approach to empower individuals throughout their journeys. They provide ongoing emotional support, guidance, and encouragement, helping individuals navigate challenges while celebrating milestones in recovery. They operate a recovery center in Coos County that provides daily activities and workshops designed to support pro-social engagement and promote positive interactions among individuals within recovery. And their housing states, so that was all in peer recovery, their housing component states that they have experience operating 3 NARR accredited transitional houses that offer 24/7 on-site support. These environments ensure residents have constant access to resources and guidance, helping them transition successfully into independent living. Additionally, manage properties dedicated to permanent supportive housing, creating stable living situations where individuals can thrive without the stress and anxiety of housing insecurity. We are excited to announce the opening of a new tribal culturally specific transitional house designed to serve the unique needs of the tribal community by accommodating up to 16 individuals, further enhancing the housing support services. And lastly, they have comments on harm reduction, their strategies to extend the impact within the community, especially in underserved areas. They're actively providing testing and educational resources that empower individuals with knowledge about their health and well-being. By implementing harm reduction approaches, they aim to reduce the negative consequences associated with substance use, fostering a safer and healthier environment. And the comprehensive model not only supports individuals in their journey towards recovery, but enhancing community health, making lasting positive impacts on the lives that they serve. They do talk about screening and a little bit about screening and assessments as well. Is that needed, or was it just those kind of 3 big ones?
Let's pause for now since we have a lot more to consider. Thank you for bringing that up. Don't close that window.
I will not.
Great. Keisha.
Wow, that sounded like an amazing application to me. But I was just talking about so like some of the previous reviews, like they had 0 in every category and then put everything in program costs, versus this like Bay Area, they put something in every category. I guess it's just we all have different perceptions and perspectives on how we look and digest this. So not saying anything on the reviewers, like man, the review work is hard and time consuming, but there are different perspectives that we might need to take into account sometimes when reviewing this stuff. And that's what I got.
Thank you, Keisha. Yes, it's very clear they distributed program costs differently. Sarah?
Hi. Okay. So I have a couple of things that I want to dig into. Just to acknowledge the program costs. Yes, I agree that they distributed their program. I was the reviewer on this. I agree that they distributed their program costs across their items. That was taken into account. They have an extraordinary amount of budget allocated for office supplies and equipment, as well as a vehicle. So beyond what in my review, I felt or assessed was reasonable for what they were asking. It seemed extraordinary cost. I am not sure why we have looped back, because I was not the only reviewer on this particular application. And I think we've said previously on, these are all good programs. They are all valuable programs. Every application that we all read, they were all good, and they would all benefit populations. But you know, me and another reviewer agreed that this is not one we would fund. And there is one here that has similar you know, requests across the board. And I'm not sure why we're looking at one that 2 people have declined, and we're not looking at the one that has green boxes across the board. So I would move that we shift the conversation for efficiency purposes to adapt, and we look at allocations there.
Yep. Jude.
Hi, sorry. And I guess because I wasn't here yet for the first one, because I was out sick, I was unaware that we weren't going to talk about ones that had been declined. But I guess for me, I was going to ask about their harm reduction line and to see what they put in there for supplies, because it could also be that an agency that has a lot of experience is going to have a lot of experience doing the budget. So I would ask some information about their harm reduction, but then absolutely we could switch over to ADAPT, because I am very curious about their peer support and their harm reduction as well. I know that they're an SUD treatment organization, so and do Medicaid reimbursement. But if we could, I just have a question about the harm reduction and what they put in their supply line.
Okay, I'll have Kylie pull that up again. And I will just level set us that the purpose of these review panel meetings is to be able to understand the scope and breadth of all applications and the input of each reviewer. And so that's why you've got all of the information here today. I truly believe that as a reviewer myself, it took a lot of time and energy to come up with recommendations. And the hard part about this process is there are going to be a lot of no's. There's under $500 million available to spend across the state, and the asks were up over $1 billion. So there will be several hard conversations to get us to solid recommendations for the OAC. Sam.
Hi, on the greens, I just have two questions. One on ADAPT, in terms of just figuring out a balance, how much we have allotted or could, allot to this county. Just wondering if ADAPT reflected on their Medicaid billable pieces, which they could do for, I know, SUD and peer. And then also just curious about Oregon Recovers and their harm reduction. I'm not familiar with Oregon Recovers as a provider of services, so just curious about those two things. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam. So let's have Jason, could you pull up the budgets for Bear Area First Step and Oregon Recovers and reflect what they indicated on their harm reduction? And then Kylie, could you pull up the narrative, the fiscal narrative for ADAPT and help reflect what they indicated for supplanting or billing Medicaid? Please.
Sure, I've got that ADAPT information right now.
Great.
I feel like I'm coming to you like on the newsroom. ADAPT does provide substance use, behavioral, mental health, and primary care services, all which are Medicaid eligible. And they can also bill for these services. They have 25 years of experience, as they say, for this. They would ensure that funds are utilized in unbillable service hours. This is the clearest way to avoid issues of supplanting. ADAPT has many service areas that are not billable through Medicaid, such as outreach peers to serve people who are not clients, housing, the sobering center, and other services and programs paid for by other grants. When funds are used to support employees in service that is partially paid through billing, employees in these departments will not have offsetting burn grant revenue that exceeds their actual cost. We have countless years of experience with funding, accounting, and managing programs, employees paid for with multiple funding streams.
Thanks, Kylie. Sam, you good with that answer?
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't get my my mute. So they're saying their SUD services and the peers within their organization cannot bill Medicaid. Is that what I heard? I know the housing.
Yeah, the clarity on that answer is not necessarily apparent that they specifically specify what they can and cannot. They just say that their substance abuse behavioral, mental health, and primary care services are all Medicaid eligible. So if that's what your interpretation of that is.
Yeah, if they're eligible, they can bill.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so I think with that, just understanding that as we move forward, I would just like those considerations as we're trying to reduce funding in areas.
Thanks, Sam. Lakeisha?
Oh, come back. I forgot.
Okay. Hannah?
Hi, y'all. So I was one of the reviewers for Oregon Recovers. And to Sam's, I think Sam had asked a question about their harm reduction piece. From my understanding, a bulk of it was for overdose outreach and education, and that was kind of their approach to the harm reduction services, as it is a digital platform. I think one of my concerns was that the budget was a bit high for harm reduction, and then also just their concern with or I made a note about question 7 as as not sufficient, just detailing and demonstration of how that outreach to the priority areas will be performed through harm reduction and peer support. But just wanted to offer those pieces. I still do recommend, my recommendation was to fund them, but that their budget was a bit higher for the harm reduction, given that my understanding was that it would be more of education awareness and outreach. So I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you for that, Hannah. Jason, do you have those budgets up? And thanks for the reminder to revisit harm reduction for Bay Area and Oregon Recovers, just to see what their line items quickly are.
Yeah, I can, were we specific in the, like, do we want to know the service and supplies in harm reduction? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how they build their budget. What does the $548,000 cover?
Okay, so yeah, so for looking at Oregon Recovers first, because that's who we were just talking about,
Great.
about 550,000 of that is in services and supplies. It looks like it's for harm reduction supplies such as Narcan, food and water for houseless communities, as well as HIV test and STI testing, syringes, etc. There's some travel expenses, telecommunication expenses. There's also a van purchase in there. And then the vehicle, all the supplies, insurance and maintenance costs on the vehicle. I think that pretty much covers what they're asking for there as far as the services and supplies. They also have about 233,000 in personnel. 20, let's see, I don't know if I'm trying to see how they break it down, sorry.
Are you in the harm reduction area?
Yes.
Okay, so to continue with Oregon Recovers, their narrative, this might parallel with you, Jason, is that they are doing outreach. They've been doing the outreach needed for overdose prevention. They're traveling across the state to different Oregon Recovers events, like Walks for Recovery and recovery events like Oxford House Conference. They have been, over the past 6 months, have been distributing Narcan at tabling events, which has become one of the most requested things. They've given over 250 doses already across the state. And this organization is also teaming up with Liz Smith, a leader, sought expert Narcan instructor, person with lived experience in addiction, and has benefited from overdose reversal medication directly. And she's providing Narcan trainings to organizations across the state. And they're looking, they serve, they have already served 180 peers directly since the launch of their program in September of 2023.
Okay, thank you. I know we had questions about harm reduction in Bay Area First Step. It is also 5 minutes before the hour. For the sake of time, I'm going to jump into calling on Emily, Drew, and Judith, and then I want to let folks go on time. Emily, go ahead.
I just a couple process questions. When our recommendations go to the OAC, will they show all of the organizations in a county, including those that are not being recommended? So like yeah, go ahead.
The OAC will be given all applications.
Okay. And okay. And then is it possible for us to get these PowerPoints so we can like look? It's just helpful for me to be able to jump around, which I can't do when you
Yeah,
have to jump.
absolutely. We'll make sure to get those out. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Drew?
Hi, thank you. I reviewed ADAPT and Curry, and I just wanted to bring up one point I had heard. They had a past M110 recipient tab, and they had an award amount of 1.6 million, only expended about 315,000. And so while I see a strong need, I just have some concern that they may have difficulty utilizing allocated funds. And that should be at least taken into consideration. I did endorse funding, but with a concern for ADAPT.
Thank you for adding that context. Jude?
Yeah, so hopefully you can tell me, Abby, if this is over. But I think as someone who has 30 plus years of experience in harm reduction and looking at we haven't heard exactly what HIV Alliance is proposing as well. I have concerns just about the narrative from Oregon Recovers because it said they distributed 250 doses of naloxone. The distribution of naloxone at tabling events is one of the least effective ways of distributing naloxone. Handing naloxone to someone who uses drugs to use on them or for them to use on someone else is the most effective way to distribute naloxone. A tabling event is not. I know that they're very popular. There is not evidence, and I'm assuming we're going to be doing evidence-informed and evidence-based practices. There's also the concern I have when I kind of look at these, that just distributing naloxone is not the only thing that meets harm reduction, and it's not the intent of Measure 110 to only do overdose prevention. It's the intent to do harm reduction, and overdose prevention is a part of harm reduction activities. So as we look, and I know you were saying hard nose, as I look at this more full county, I would propose to think about looking at each of these sections and looking at whether or not an agency is located in that area, provides service in that area, is bringing that level of experience, because traveling across the state to do this work is not the same as an agency that's centered in this area with employees who live in this area doing one-on-one harm reduction with people who use drugs to save their lives in these areas. So I really I hope that we can come back to this county, but I'm thinking when we get to these fuller counties, if we want to fill out this continuum, I almost feel like we need to look at the boxes by columns and not necessarily by the agency, because just because an agency is really good at substance use treatment doesn't necessarily mean they're good at harm reduction or housing. And the way we've defined, the way peer support is defined by Measure 110 is slightly different. So that's all I'm going to say.
Great.
And I'm sorry, I took us to the end.
No, actually, I think that's a beautiful way to close us out for today, is that your wisdom and expertise is what informs these recommendations. And, oh, hey, I know that organization, they should be billing Medicaid for those things, right? So that was a conversation that came up with ADAPT. There's also consideration of the reviewers and how many recommended for funding and how many didn't, and questioning about the location of a place. And sometimes an applicant might put that in their application and maybe they don't, but you know it because of your professional and personal experience about the strengths and challenges of each of these different service areas and the providers who want to have funds to be able to provide that service. So here we are to noon. We're going to close. We are going to reconvene next week. Sam and I are going to discuss how to continue to provide additional structure to help move these conversations along. So thank you for your patience as we learn and experience and identify the ways to make this work better together. Carly will send out slides for Curry and for Crook, which are both done. Please note the slides at the bottom are just playing around with potential ways to make those hard decisions. None of this is recommendations. None of this is something to vote on, but simply trying to find a way to play together to do math in a group, which is always a great idea. So with that, I want to say a heartfelt thank you, and please feel free to call or email or text anytime. Happy to receive your recommendations for process. We will continue to lean in and do as much work together we can to get us to these recommendations. Anything else before we close? Thank you all. Until next week.